Welcome back to Uncharted, your sidekick for life. In this episode, we're getting into the world of PR, branding, and wellness with Darlene Fiske, founder of the Fiske Group and Swell, the agency. Darlene has spent decades shaping the stories of top luxury hospitality and wellness brands, helping them build their reputation and connect with the right audiences. From her early days in Yellowstone National Park to running a powerhouse PR agency, Darlene shares how she's carved out her own path, took risks, and found success by following her passions. We discuss storytelling, brand building, career pivots, and the future of wellness. Plus, how she's helping brands stay ahead in a rapidly changing world. And special thanks to our Gen Z contributors this episode, Sarah, who shares her thoughts on self-sufficiency, technology, and the desire to reconnect with nature, and Gabriel, who asks for advice on how to take his creative or business ideas to the next level, looking for practical steps to make his vision a reality. Entrepreneurs, storytellers, and those just looking for inspiration will get a lot out of this episode. Let's get started.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Founding Up.
Thanks.
Uncharted, your sidekick for life.
Thanks for being here.
Man, it's such a great day out there. The weather was beautiful this morning.
Yeah.
You know what was funny? I was sitting at a coffee meeting this morning outside. What are the little things on the trees that come out? They look like little acorns. They look like acorns. Are they acorns?
Maybe.
Anyway, I was sitting over at Radio Coffee this morning, having a meeting with Gloria, and wind was blowing just enough when those things started hitting like rain, and it was like, whoa!
That's fun.
It was like hail. I'm like, oh, let's just gonna finish this up. So anyway, great morning. So today we've got a special episode 3 season.
Or season 3 episode unknown.
Unknown.
So we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Guest, Darlene Fiske. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your intro, what you're doing today, who you are, all that good stuff.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me, Natalie and Dan. It's great to be here. I've been a fan of yours for many years, Dan. I'm a fan of yours, Natalie. I just met, but I already know I like you. I am the owner of the Fiske Group Public Relations and also of Swell, the agency. It's a communications firm for wellness brands. So I have been running the Fiske Group. I had to look at my calendar and look up dates last night because I always get confused about how long ago I started this company. And I started it in 2005. So I'll be celebrating my 20th anniversary next year.
Nice.
That's major.
I feel like I should throw a party or something.
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
Yep. Everybody know.
What
are we saying when the party is?
Yeah. Do we want to start planning?
You're going to have a lot of guests on the podcast.
I know. It's not too soon to start making plans. And that's exciting because also that means that I have worked with my one of my original clients, Lake Austin Spa Resort, for 20 years.
Wow.
Have been handling their PR, which is sort of unheard of in the PR space. And it makes me very proud and honored to still be with them. And the way I got to that point of starting the Fiske Group was that I worked at Lake Austin Spa Resort for 10 years before I started my business. So that means I will have been associated with them for 30 years. And doing that math, that means I started when I was 15. And I was very young. They took me on very early. No, I went to school at the University of Texas and I got a degree in journalism and public relations because I thought that was a good degree that would fit into any industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really know, where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. And I took a job out of college at a property management company where I was the marketing director, making, very $20,000 a year, but I had a great title and thought that I was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Before we get into that part, what's the day in the life of, so this is, most of our stories, what they really are is a roadmap to here's how I've gotten to where I need to, where I am today. So we want to backtrack that. So, while yes, I want to go back and learn about that in a second, I wanted to kind of figure out what the day in the life of what you do today is. Like, what does a PR person do? Because think about a person in the audience, like, I wonder what I want to do and want to be, and I want to like kind of give them a little bit of a appetite.
Because you could also look at PR like, oh, we turn narratives when a crisis or something dramatic happens.
Yes.
Like there's a whole show about that, a PR agency out of London, or the PR that's like, oh, a company's launching, a project is launching, and you give it the publicity for that. So there's two different types of PR firms as well.
Especially since you do two different things. You do this. I kind of want to learn a little bit of both.
Sure.
Because again, someone in our audience might be like, I'm doing journalism now. What should I do?
Right. Well, a day in the life, I like to think of what I do for work is I help brands manage their reputation.
Cool.
So that could come about in a lot of different ways. It could be working with influencers to bring them in to interact with that brand. It could be storytelling, helping brands craft their story. Here's how you want the public to view you. And that comes out in press releases, in content creation. It could be for their website or for social media. It could be crisis communications, which is my least favorite thing, but it's necessary. And I know there are firms that specialize in that, and knock on some wood, haven't had too many of those situations come up. But when it does, it's important to get on top of things quickly and have a plan in place. And also it is about getting other people to talk about you in the way that you want to be seen by the public. And so that is a little more handcrafted storytelling, and can take a lot longer. And that really starts with like defining what the brand story is, and then coming up with the media outlets or publications that your customer is reading, and then how do we fit into what they're talking about? And so
I think that's really cool. It sounds like, and because I've got some media background, I've dealt closely in that, it sounds like there's a lot of creative thought that goes into the storytelling of a brand. And that's, for the audience, you think that's just second nature to a business, but a lot of businesses are just focused on what they're building.
Right, or
like
what they
we
do.
are building this widget, and there's so many aspects to a business, and you get focused on. And a lot of businesses, startups, are like engineers, or maybe since you work in the health and health and wellness, they're just specializing in they have different backgrounds, but it's in that specific expertise.
Yeah,
they're not necessarily storytellers. And so it sounds like that's where you come in and kind of connect dots. Yes,
and I can't tell you, yes, that's all true. And so many times what happens is a client will come to us and say, oh, we should get this in Vogue. Vogue would love this story. Well, and so part of our job too is managing our clients' expectations. Sure. Well, let me tell you, I have to read Vogue to see what sort of stories might align with what you're doing. Right. And if what you're doing exciting for them, is it something they've never heard of, or something that's really like up here, or maybe, there's another way in. So it's really like, I don't want to make it sound like we take each publication and look at like what would excite them, but we kind of do.
Right. You're connecting dots.
Very,
does it fit?
It's very like a couture fashion designer.
Sure.
Like, you want to be here? Well, let us dissect that and see what it would take to get there, and who we know, and how we could make this magic happen. And that's the fun part of it. And then when it does happen, it's like Christmas, like, oh my gosh, we got this story in Vogue. Right. And, and those days are really great days. But then it's fleeting. And then it's like the next day, it's like, okay, well, where do we stand on,
what's next?
Voting in these awards programs, and, what's next? When's our next call?
And it sounds like, well, also I want to understand the difference between your PR agency and your agency. And are all of your clients typically health and wellness clients on the PR side, or just through the Swell side?
So for Swell, those are Swell is a partnership with another woman on the West Coast named Kim Marshall. And she and I created Swell in 2018 because we had a lot of experience in the wellness space. that business works specifically with wellness brands. It could be a cork yoga mat, or it could be we produce the Global Wellness Summit podcast. We worked with a hot springs in Colorado to really up their wellness game and learn how to talk about wellness as it relates to water and hot springs, because that sort of hadn't happened before.
Right.
So that's Swell. And then we also do something really cool with Swell, where we do a launchpad strategic vision session where we help brands wherever they are in the course of their evolution, take a sneak peek at like, okay, what's happening in the world today? What are the trends happening in technology? What's happening in politics? And how do you relate to that right now? And what do we need to change and pivot to make sure you're going in the right direction?
Strategic, yeah.
And then we come up with a roadmap to help guide them. But it's all drawn out on the walls by a graphic facilitator, and it's beautifully done. It looks like art. When you're done with it, it's like it's magical. Nice. And so we've done that for brands too, apart from like a PR campaign.
Sure.
So that's Swell. It could be products. It could be travel. It could be organizations. It could be people. And then the Fiske Group is more about travel, luxury travel, hospitality, but also art and some skincare lines and devices that help firm and tone your body, but mostly it's travel. That's my sweet spot and my happy place.
That's
really
great.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that's a great day in the life. So day in the life of you're doing the connecting of the dots, and it sounds like a lot of fun too. So there's a lot of brain work, but it sounds like a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, and it's also a little glamorous. Like when I post pictures from, Lake Austin Spa Resort or Mohawk Mountain House,
This is one of my favorite places on planet Earth. I was literally considering getting married there.
Oh my gosh.
I love Mohawk. We used to go every Christmas.
You did.
I love Mohawk so much.
You're a little excited about that, I could tell.
I love Mohawk.
Did you know that before I got here?
No, I had no idea.
She jumped on
That's because I'm so surprised not everybody knows about this place.
I didn't know about this place.
Well, they should, because we do their PR.
They should.
They should. We're trying. No, they have.
Dan, can I describe it? Dan?
Talk. Yeah.
It is a castle, basically, in the mountains of upstate New York, in New Paltz, which is also a college town. So it's like a really fun area. Every room is so magical. They don't have televisions, but they have fireplaces. Nice. And there's a big lake that freezes, and you can go ice skating in the winter, and you can go on hikes through the mountains. And in the summer, you can like play tennis, and it's like a resort. Like if you were to go to Mexico, you can just stay there and not ever feel like you're missing anything. Mm-hmm. It's like that, but in the mountains and for the snow.
Natalie,
tell me about the food.
You're hired.
Is that a good plug for it?
Hired.
Tell me about the food. Is it like...
I discovered my favorite type of omelet when I was little there. It was like on a Saturday, maybe a Christmas morning, and you can walk through and the chefs will hand make you this omelet. And I'd never heard of putting cream cheese in an omelet before. And they taught me that. So the food is super eclectic but comforting, but like with I would say a flair of like French, and I don't know.
It's a great experience.
Yeah, it's an incredible
experience.
Of
local growers from the Hudson Valley. They had a feature in the New York Times in 2017 on their food about how they have really evolved through the years. I was not responsible for that, full disclosure, for the feature in the New York Times, which just kills me. But it happened, and we're celebrating it, and the food, it's still the same chefs in place, and it's all inclusive. Like you were saying, you never have to leave because everything is there for you. 85 miles of hiking trails.
Nice.
And they just opened a new Via Ferrata, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's in between hiking and rock climbing.
Wow.
And you're tethered to the rocks through harnesses, and then there are these steps and sort of like a ladder system that traverse the entire cliffs, the Shamgung cliffs, and you walk along those with a guide and make your way around the rock, and you're sort of up high, dangling above the tree line, and you could see the Lake Mohonk in the distance and the house in the distance. And so I have a lot of photos of myself like doing these fun things. And all my friends are like, oh, you have the best job in the world. Like I actually do.
Yeah.
I do.
That's
I
well,
love
and
that you
that's
know it.
I am amazed that you run their PR.
that's amazing that well, let's talk about amazing. The word amazing. Everything's amazing.
amazing.
But no, I love that you get up and just work on something that you're passionate about. And I think that's the message I hope comes across for our audience is you can choose to do things, or you can design your life in a way that you show up and work is fun. It's not work. It's actually things you get to go do and discover. So that's pretty cool.
That makes my heart happy too. Like it's every day. I never have this dread of like, it's Sunday night, I have to get up and work. It never feels like that. It used to.
Right.
But I don't have that. And I really feel very fortunate that I've taken sort of these turns and chances and risks in my career that have gotten me to this point. And I'm just thankful to all the people who have helped me along the way too, to get here.
That's wonderful.
That is so cool. So it sounds like mentorship was involved with that process.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Let's roadmap back to now. You said you had a journalism degree. Let's figure out what your first job was and what you wanted to become, what you saw. Let's go there.
And I definitely want to dissect the risk part, because I wonder if part of your happiness and ease and getting to wake up every morning to do your job has to do with the fact that you are your own boss. Maybe. I mean, obviously your clients you work with or for, but you own your company, which gives you...
There is some ease in that, but I'll also tell you that every day I worry that I could get fired. And so there's this constant need on my end to perform and to make everybody happy on all sides, on the journalist side, on the influencer side, on my client side. Like I am the consummate peacekeeper and people pleaser. And so there's a little bit of stress in that, but it also keeps me on my toes and keeps
you sharp.
Yeah, exactly.
And up to date on all the cool things that are happening.
Yeah.
Should we go back to when she was 15 question?
Yeah. We'll go there.
What did you want to do, like as a child or as a teenager? Did you have a vision for your life and your career?
This is going to sound really crazy,
okay,
and weird.
I love it.
I wanted to be Cinderella.
That's not crazy or weird.
I don't know. I would sign pieces of trash, Cinderella. And because I thought one day someone's going to find this trash and be like, oh my gosh, Cinderella signed this. I have to have it. What? I mean, I don't even know where this came from.
It's adorable.
That went away. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I was in high school, and my English teacher, Mrs. Thompson, told the class about this experience that she and her husband did. They went to work in Yellowstone National Park. And she said, anyone who's interested in maybe doing this, it's 3 months. There's room and board. You get to live in a national park for the month. And they have all kinds of jobs. You can lead, people on horses. You can work at the front desk. You can serve food in the cafeteria. And I thought, well, that sounds like fun. So a couple of my friends and I went for the first summer. And I served food in the cafeteria line, mashed potatoes and meatloaf to busloads of tourists coming through the park. And I loved it. I loved being in nature. My dad did a really great job of exposing me to nature early on. We would go to a lot of parks and camping trips, and of course, he'd tell us to go outside and play a lot. And so I was into sports and outdoors type things. And I did that. I worked in Yellowstone for 3 summers.
Wow.
And on the last summer, I called my dad and my sister. I went to the payphone. People may not know what those are. But back in the day, you could put some quarters into a phone and make a call to someone. And I called my dad and my sister and I said, I think I want to stay here and be a park ranger.
Aww.
And they said, no way. You've got to come home. You can't be that far away from the family.
The vacation was nice, but that's not permanent.
Yeah. You need to finish college and do it, quote, needs, what everybody
else says and does. What, did it have anything to do with money?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not really. I think it was just being
Meaning
close.
you wouldn't make enough, perhaps, or okay.
They weren't really concerned about that. It was just being close to them, finishing college and getting a degree. And so, but right then I knew I wanted to do that. I was like, oh, all right, I'll come home. So I came home, finished college. My first job out of college was at the property management company. I really was not a good fit for me. I knew I was locked up in a room with no windows.
Ooh.
Yeah, that is not for you. Not after spending 3 summers in the most beautiful place on earth.
Yes, thank you. And so I got laid off from that job. They lost all of their business because for whatever reason. And I started looking. I was nervous because I had already been looking for jobs. I was not happy there. And then this happened. I got laid off and like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So I found this ad in the paper in the classified section. Again, we're going way back, payphones and classified newspaper ads. But it said resort scheduling, lakeside environment, event planning. And I thought, well, this sounds great. So I call phone number. And they said, well, this is Lake Austin Spa Resort, and you would be answering phones in the reservation department. And I thought, I can't do that. I'm a marketing director. I had
make
these
20 grand a year.
Yeah, exactly. What are you offering?
Yeah.
So they said, well, just come out and take a look. Come see us. Let's have a conversation. I thought, you know what? I have nothing to lose because I don't have a job.
Sure.
And so I went out there. Oh my goodness. You guys, you've been out. When you drive through those gates, it is nirvana. The resort sits on this beautiful body of water across from the Balcones Canyonlands Nature Preserve. And my office that I would be looking out of in the reservations department looked out over Lake Austin and this beautiful like wall of trees. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I could do this. And this place excites me. And I get to look at this all day. So I took that job in reservations and I did it for a year and I made more money than I made at the property management company. And what I learned that first year was all about the affluent consumer and what mattered to them. Right. I mean, we were the most expensive hotel in all of Texas, the highest average room rate. And so I was selling like at that time, $600 a night, rates to these people. And I thought, well, this is crazy. I could never afford anything like this, but it was and I had no experience in sales.
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing, but they were desperate for people to they needed someone on the phones and I was there and it worked out. Thank goodness. So I did it for a year and then I got offered at the resort to be the executive assistant to the general manager. Okay. So what? I'm going to go from the reservations department to the secretary?
Right.
What am I doing? And I talked to some friends about it and they said, look, this is a new challenge for you. If it doesn't feel scary, then you're not growing. And I thought, well, this feels really scary. So maybe I'm going to do it. And once again, when I was in that position, the resort sold. And the new owners were from Dallas and Louisiana. They were fraternity brothers, Mike McAdams and Billy Rux. And I was in the right place at the right time because they let the general manager go. He was not doing a good job. And then I was there and I kind of knew who did what, where everything was. I was very useful. And I'll never forget Mike McAdams one day. He's, sitting in the general manager's office and I'm out in the secretary area. And he asked me to write a letter. He was a big marketer. He was brilliant at that. And he said, would you write a letter to these direct markets? And we're going to try to, go after some direct fly markets to come visit us. And so I wrote this marketing piece. And he's like, wow, you're really a good writer. And I said, well, I have a degree in journalism. Glad you recognize that. So that's how it really began. Then I started moving around Lake Austin. I became the director of sales and then the director of sales and marketing and hired 3 PR agencies while I was there, which was really fantastic.
For a learning process or for...
Yes.
What was fantastic about it?
Well, it was a couple of things. One is I was the on-site contact for every journalist that came through the door. So when they would bring somebody from Town and Country magazine to stay and write about the resort, I was the person who gave them their tour and followed up with them when they left. And so after doing that for many years, I had this Rolodex built up kind of accidentally because I wasn't planning to start my own PR agency. But when you sort of get to the end of, I worked there for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, it's like, well, what do I have? Yeah. And what can carry over into something and where I'll be really successful. And so I learned a lot from the agencies in terms of what made the client happy, who was better than the others, what makes a good publicist. And all of that really helped shape the company that I wanted to create when I left Lake Austin Spa Resort.
So cool.
Yeah.
Because you've got a roadmap for 10 years of direct experience as well.
Well, and what I take away from that, and I hope the audience does, is that you never know where that door is going to lead. And you saying yes, even taking a risk at that point, saying yes to something that's scary. So your friends, whoever your mentors or friend mentors, whoever was telling you at that point in time, were telling you the right thing to do is at that point, which is if it scares you, you are growing.
Yeah.
But then it took your choice to say, I want to do that. I want to grow.
And humility, because originally you thought, this is a downgrade. I'm a secretary now.
I know.
Right?
Times two. First, like answering the phones.
Right. I have a journalism degree.
Right. I know.
So that took a lot of humility and like patience or hope that like, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to learn something from this. Like you had an open mind basically.
Yeah. And I loved being there in that environment. I mean, we were helping people live healthy lives through food and yoga and fitness and cooking classes and touch, massage and body treatments. And I saw the magic that created in people. And it was the very beginning of the wellness boom, which we're in now. It's a $5.6 trillion global economy. I mean, Hoda Kotb just left Today's Show to start her own wellness podcast. Like, everyone's getting into it. Katie Couric's doing an event, in 2025 around this. Like, it's now what we all need because so many of our healthcare systems are not working well for us. Yeah. And so we're taking it into our own hands. And it's an exciting place to be and space to be. And it excited me back then, 29 years ago, and still today. It's
the other thing
really
that,
cool.
Well, one, I love that you made those points. The other thing that resonated with me with what you said was, here you were in this uncomfortable space of these people, $600 a room at that point in time. This was the affluent market. It's completely new to you. But what a leg up, because now what maybe you weren't thinking at the time, but you were literally being grown into an entire different kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you're immersed. It's kind of like when you go to another country and speak another language, like you get there and you just dump there and you just get immersed.
And you're forced to learn.
Now you're immersed in a different realm.
Yeah. It's like I got into these people's heads who are making the decision to spend X amount on these experiences. And so to take that and then flip it into telling the story of these brands that wanted that customer was such good experience. The only thing I wish I would have done also is worked on the other side, like as a journalist. I wish I could have worked in a newsroom because I think that would have been so cool to sit around at the table and hear, all of these reporters and journalists come in and pitch ideas to the editor to see how that process takes place. And something I wish I would have done is at least asked to sit in on some of those meetings if I didn't get to work there. Sure. That would have been really cool.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Well, I've done some of that on, with running the magazine. And it is cool. It is cool to kind of like kind of hear all these stories coming through and be like, I want that one. I want that one. I want that one.
Yeah.
And it is kind of like what makes most sense for what we're trying to do for this issue, right? So you got to tie everything to a story. Everything is storytelling, whether it's on that side or the other side. It's just, how do we tell the story? How do we accomplish what we want to accomplish with this particular issue?
And so much of it too is about trends and just what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, all of that is just changing and happening at such a rapid pace with social media. And
But I really love what you said about the wellness space, because I really hadn't thought about that. And this is the second time I've heard it. The wellness space has, but I hadn't heard it the way you articulated it, which is it's growing at such a clip. But you're completely right. The reason why it's growing at such a clip is because we are unhealthy. We're taking it into our own hands to figure it out because the governments aren't doing it. As a matter of fact, the governments are doing the opposite, which is, the lobby and everything else to put things in our food and all that stuff. Yeah.
That's right.
And so the awareness is coming out of that through these conversations and through other things, but then also the people that are taking the charge in wellness and saying, creating these areas where are learning centers. Here's where I get to learn things that are outside of the system, which is
Yeah. And wellness is so encompassing. I mean, it used to be like maybe you would think of it as a massage, but it's so much more. It's, nutrition and food and, of course, fitness and alternative therapies and mental health, and wellness real estate is actually, one of the bubbles in the big chart that makes up that large economy.
What does that mean?
That means that there are communities being built around the U.S. and outside of the U.S. that have wellness components built into the housing experience. So, for example, there is a place in Park City, outside of Park City, Utah, called Amiyali, and it's half residences, half hotel. But the center, the grounding element is Deepak Chopra's philosophies will come into play to sort of provide programming for those residents and hotel guests. So you might walk into your residence and Digital Deepak, which is an AI tool, you might say, hey, what can I make for dinner tonight that, I've got these ingredients. Tell me what would be the most nourishing for my body. Wow. Things like that. Like that can...
Never heard of that.
It can be that's the future that the wellness industry is creating.
That's so cool.
I mean, I would like to live in a place like that.
Me too.
As you were talking about that, it reminded me of our episode with Jennifer Hill. And Jennifer Hill does a lot of conferences with Deepak. So you guys, if you don't know
they
each other,
had a TV show together.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you don't know her, we'll connect you. She's a wonderful individual.
She's amazing.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. My Kim Marshall, my business partner for Swell, just went to Sages and Scientists, which is a.
Yep.
Do you know what that?
Yeah. Well, she told me she was going to that, so she was part of that.
Was that here in Austin?
No, that's in.
I know. I can't remember.
It was Europe somewhere. I'm not sure where it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember her.
I've heard it was really cool. Yeah.
Very awesome. Cool. Let's see. Any other questions or any other thoughts?
I think you are being Cinderella these days. Being able to hang at Mohonk Mountain House.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what did Cinderella do after she became princess?
Well, I'll tell you.
She ran a PR agency.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a modern version.
So the story originated from China, Yeixin, and it comes from how the Chinese used to bound their feet. So that's where the little glass slipper came from. So it was originally a Chinese story back in the Tang Dynasty. But what I'm getting at is at the end of the story, she does find her king. But how we twisted it at the end is we said, I will be your wife if I can rule side by side with you and make our kingdom a better place. So the point is she took her own agency and now she's ruling to make nature and family and community better. And I think that's what you're doing too, making nature, community, family experiences better.
Look at you blush.
I love that. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
I didn't know I was so cool.
Yes, you are. All righty, let's jump into some questions, huh? So as you know, part of this is let's go and listen to what some of our audience is concerned about.
Okay.
And so our first one, we have Sarah, and Anais has been gracious enough to go out there and talk to some of these individuals, and let's see what Sarah has to say.
If you could imagine like an ideal world, an ideal society, what do you envision?
I think one where we are becoming more self-sufficient, maybe growing our own food. We are kind of deterring away from technology as much, which is interesting because you guys are developing an AI. But I think that, like, at least for me, I kind of want to, I don't know, kind of maybe more isolate myself into like living on my land, getting off my phone as much. And I think, I don't know, it's hard to say like what I envision for society. I think that just kind of going back to our roots a little bit, growing food, being involved in our communities, and like finding peace within a community too, and like helping each other out.
Kind of what we were talking about with these new communities.
I know, yeah.
Imagine how Katie figured that out. I don't know. She just has this.
She does a great job, Katie, in choosing clips that will align with our guests.
Yeah. I love that.
So commenting on that too, I mean, it's not just something that we're seeing, but also our youth are saying, hey, we want to, society is too much, right? Technology, at some point, it's just becomes this, I need to get out and reset and aligning with nature. So that speaks to me a lot about what you saw, wanting to work as a park ranger.
That makes me happy that, I think about that age group, and my son is sort of in that.
How old is your son?
Transition, 21.
Oh, that's right. My daughter's 21 as well. So
yeah, that's right. We talked about that. He's graduating from college soon and entering the workforce. And
what's he doing?
He's a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
Wow.
And so he'll be working for a helicopter group in Fort Worth, which is very different from being a park ranger.
Right.
But what I do love is that, the things that he values are like friendships and human connections. And, he just made this connection with a cat that he and his girlfriend found in Austin at a food truck and decided to take it home. And like that makes me happy because that's away from the phone. I mean, I think that like a lot of kids and this group is really tethered to their phone. And I like hearing that people are naturally gravitating towards moving away from that. Because one of the big questions I have for the future is, where do we find truth and facts? So much we did one of these Launchpad sessions with somebody, and we asked someone in the group who is an author where he got his news. Like, where do you get information on a daily basis? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And we said, well, like CNN or the New York Times or Fox or whatever, he's like, because like he couldn't think of anything. And he held up his phone and he opened up Instagram and he said, this is where I get my news. And that just frightened me, like from a publicist. So point of view, I think about that all the time. Like, how will people consume information down the road, and who's creating that information? And maybe, sort of going back to slower times is what we're all going to need in the future.
I have a thought. I'm very much of a futurist in how I see things evolving.
Yeah.
And I practice it. So I'm always on the cutting edge of things. I look a lot internally for news. I mean, not external news, but essentially I don't search as much. There's a universe that I create, and that's where I focus. I don't really focus on noise. But when I do need something, we now have AI tools to go look for it. So I don't go and search blah, blah, blah. I ask the closest thing to truth, and I can ask it different ways. Go find this for me, and what's going on today, blah, 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 and let's source it. And so it goes out and does all the things, and it gives me unbiased stuff, right? And I think that's what the future is going to be.
You know what? I love that. And I think, we talk about AI a lot, and it's coming, and it can't be stopped. Like, it's happening. And so how do we interact with it, and how do we engage and use it for our benefit? And it's true, when you do want to go look something up on the internet the old way through Google or whatever, there's so much, and you don't know like what is accurate, what's not accurate, what's backed by science, what's being paid for.
Right.
And so a tool that can put everything into a funnel for us to take information out of is kind of cool.
It's very cool. Well, it's almost like we went through an information overload, and it's a lot of trash. And now you have an assistant that can go through the trash and find out the nuggets.
Yeah.
Right. And I went through an exercise, as we all know, we're going through, it's political season, right? I don't get involved in this. I'm very neutral when all this says, but I've got a 21-year-old that comes in, is very emotionally charged. And a lot of these emotions come from Instagram and just different noise that is happening, right? And it's unchecked, they're just emotional bits of information. And it makes one bias based on what they're hearing. So we had a 2-hour conversation the other day. It was a really interesting educational conversation, because everything that she would say, I said, have you researched that? Have you researched that? And it was, well, someone said this or someone said this. Is that research? And so let's just go over to the GPT and ask these questions. And you would ask GPT these questions, and it was a very middle of the road answer for everything. And then she walked away thinking differently of her positions, just because there was research that was done. And she's like, I feel much better about not hearsay, and it was less emotional. You can just see that anger is like, oh,
dissolve.
I understand a lot. And she wants to be in government. So she's actually taking some of those, going to the ACC and taking some of those government courses that we're talking about. And I said, if you're going to do this, you need to be facts-based and not emotion charged. And, you've got to understand that. So at the end of that conversation, I just saw the emotions and just a much more level-headed decision-making. So we'll continue working on that. But I think that's the way of the future.
Benefit, yeah.
You've already got an assistant that can mine through this trash and find truth.
And also our intuition is something we shouldn't ignore. I think that's a powerful tool for us. I was on a wellness panel, and that came up a lot. It's like, do we use the snail, whatever excrement to like put on our face for facials? Like, really? But then some people on the panel were like, yes, I used it. It's great. I'm like, well, you know what? Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about intuition and just following your gut and what feels right and what doesn't. And, that requires, I think, too, stepping away from your device every once in a while and getting some perspective.
Well, that's what I meant by I look internal first, just because like what does feel right, what resonates with me, using some deep thought. And there's a book that we talked about. It's all about, if you're always looking external and you're looking to be entertained, you're going to always be in shallow thought, and you can live in shallow thought. But if you get away from that, we have, just like a muscle, you have really incredible reasoning power to like go in deep and really kind of give that some pondering.
Yeah.
And when you do that, anxiety comes down, all of these things. And so if you don't look at all the noise and you look at what universe you're trying to create, because every one of us has a different universe. We're experiencing something similar here today because we're seeing each other, but then we walk away from here and you've got your universe, I've got my universe. Everybody does that. So if you just like focus on that and not be like entertained by all the buzz, just like, what am I trying to create? How am I going to contribute to the world? Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I think that sounds beautiful. And the challenge, I mean, for me personally, is like how to stay off of, all the fun social media stuff. But, and I'm on it too for my job.
Right.
Yeah. I have to be looking up an influencer to see if they're a good fit for this, client X.
Yeah.
And And then, of course, there's all these pretty things in front of me, like, whoa, what's my friend Pam doing? I haven't seen her in a long time. Like, tink, and I'm not one to get lost on in the whole real, world. I have friends now who literally, they don't send me a note like, how are you doing? They just send me reels. I'm like, I'm not doing, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
And it's something they think I would think is funny, but I'd rather like talk to them on the phone and have a laugh and catch up with them for 2 or 3 minutes than get lost down that rabbit hole.
Isn't it surprising how when you do that, you get so much more out of it?
Yeah.
And like, let me catch up and let me, and just like so much more relevant news to your own universe. I think that makes a lot of sense. We had someone on our show talk about seeing social media as a diet and having certain times when they'll engage, but then the rest of the time it's and I don't do social media very often, but if it's going to be that, it's going to be 30 minutes or so at the end of the day. I just want to like, it's entertainment. It's in place of a TV or whatnot. It's like, I'm going to do this just for a certain period of time and wind down if that's what I want to choose to do.
Yeah.
But very much not get caught up in half an hour and be like, all right, go. Setting timers, things of that nature is probably good ideas. There's got to be strategies.
I just wanted to put a period on what Sarah was talking about, because if she were to embrace going into a more sustainable life and being able to be self-sufficient and live on the land and stuff like that, the open source aspect of social media and the resources that you can find within people teaching you how to plant cilantro or whatever it is so useful, especially if that's what you're getting into and you're new to it. And I utilize reels and things like that to learn.
Right.
Because there's these people putting out stuff about their life, and sometimes it's for gain, or maybe they get some brand deal because they have a bunch of followers, but they're really putting it out there to share information freely. And that's what I like about it.
That's so true. And even on YouTube, I mean, you could look up
YouTube University.
Anything. How do I replace the, battery in my key fob for my car?
Right.
Wow.
It's so useful.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I'm also changing that to GPT. Now I ask GPT everything. Yeah, because it's quicker. I don't even have to search through all the videos of YouTube. I can go straight to GPT and it'll point me in the right direction. But yeah, it's just a new wave. But to your point, I think the balance there, like for her, imagining her future, is if you're out doing sustainable stuff, it is that diet, because you're not going to spend all your day because you've got all the work that needs to happen.
A lot of work around a farm.
You're gonna be doing that. So it's like at the end of the day, you're exhausted. You're like, how do I do this? Boom.
Right.
Done.
Yeah.
So
one more story. One of the women who I work with, I have a team of fantastic elves that work for me. I can't do it all on my own.
I love it.
But one of the women that I work with, she lives in the Hudson Valley. And when I first started talking to her about coming on board to help out with some clients, she told me that on Fridays she goes and works in the community garden and she wouldn't be available. I'm like, you're hired.
Yeah.
This is the type of person that I want on my team. So I've learned a lot from her. She's an amazing human being, and it's really
just
been
having a wonderful balance.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it sounds like she really has figured out balance. Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's do one more question, and I think that'll give us enough time for the episode. We've got Gabriel.
What would be your, the next 5 steps you would take towards making, the business that I have, able to get to that next level, able to, function in the way that, I'm imagining that it's going to function.
So putting my kind of hat as a much younger individual trying to figure out, we're always in this wondery of what do I need to do next? What are the next steps? And I think it's a very important thought process or exercise to go through. Looking back from where I'm at now, I still ask those questions on a daily basis. Like, what do I need to be doing today? Where do I need to focus today? Because I've got the bigger universe of what I mentioned, creating what small steps, what incremental steps need to happen today. So I think that's a question you ask yourself on a regular basis. I would also, talking about balance that out with and we'll go into this mental wellness and some of the wellness things that we've talked about, is my belief is that as long as you find purpose and figure out what that is, so that would be the first thing, which is what I love about your story, because at the very beginning, you kind of fell into purpose with nature and Yellowstone, and like this spoke to you. And the second you went into something that didn't fit inside a box, no view, you're like, eh. And the reason that the property worked for you is that you had the wall of trees, and it just like you were able to find that balance to really talk to you. So I think that's the most important question to be asking at the younger point, is like, who am I? Like what resonates with me? And from that point forward, once you start fitting, once you start understanding that you are in alignment with, what you're doing, and you're finding joy in your work, then not stress so much about what are the things I need to do next. It's more like, all right, more like a river, and you're on a raft and you're like, let's let this thing flow and let's see what comes up. What opportunities show up for me, because they will. And your story is the perfect illustration to show that, because you did that finding and you landed in things that didn't seem like they might connect, but because that the nature was speaking to you through the windows and whatnot, you took positions that were, one would think, outside the norm, yet the river still flowed for you. It still landed
you. Took you on a different direction.
Still landed where you need to go. And I think that's what life, like that's been my experience. That's what I see in others. I see in stories like this, is that life will still take you there if you're open, if you are open to growth, if you just kind of make sure that it's singing to you along the way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And taking chances.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of times people want that perfect job when they get out of college, or if that's the path that they choose, it's got to be this much and, full time and this, and or maybe like college isn't for them and they don't know what they want to do, but knowing who you are and like what fills your heart and brings you joy. Like if you like fashion, go work in Nordstrom at the as a cashier, like whatever that is, because if you start there and you have these other skills and talents, someone will recognize that in you. Yeah. And you will naturally, if you want to go places, you can go places. Right. You just have to set yourself in the right area-ish, know?
I love that illustration, because you have to learn the framework first. And that's what you had to do. Before you went into PR, how do you learn the framework? You start answering phones and you start connecting dots and you start understanding what your general manager does. And all of the framework of the system is what so you just said the same thing. Yes, fashion. Where do you start? School, and then also potentially, sales. And you learn that framework and you meet vendors and you ask them questions and A, B, C, and then you're off to
put yourself in the. I want to brag on my son for a little bit, but he had an internship last year and at this helicopter company, and one of the things he told me that he did on top of doing his job is he would just walk around into the different departments and ask people questions about their job. Mm-hmm. And I always thought I wanted to raise a curious child, but how do you do that? It's really hard to like instill curiosity in someone. I think it's sort of innate, but I love that he did that, because that's really how you can grow too. It's like talk to as many different people as you can and find out about them and find out what their path was. I always, I think the phrase "don't talk to strangers" that we're taught as children is like horrible.
Right.
We should always be talking to strangers and finding out their story. Mm-hmm. I mean, be safe about it.
It's great that you said that, because I'm like, yeah, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. What have I done my entire life is talk to strangers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. You can get so much out of that and learning about people just in a couple of questions, and maybe it doesn't lead anywhere, but like you feel good when it's done. Both of you, have this exchange. And
what you said about how do you raise a child to ask questions, I think it's what you don't do, meaning that whenever they ask you questions, you encourage them being inquisitive, and you don't like discourage that. And I think you did a wonderful job. If he became that individual, mm-hmm. It's like you just go do that. Go ask that. And what I have found through just my journey in talking to strangers is that everybody wants to share their story. Everybody. Yes. Like everybody's got something to teach.
And people love talking about themselves, you know?
And teaching.
Yeah.
So for those in the audience that are listening to this, go and ask strangers something.
That's right.
Be careful who you're asking. But I mean, if you have a curiosity about something, he had a curiosity about helicopters and that just asking different people in the department.
And what it's like to work there. You know, what do you like about working here? What is, your favorite thing? And just being interested in people and wanting to, like, it was because he wanted to work there. And I think that's a good way to find out where you want to be, is to ask questions.
Love it. And that's a wrap. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, I did too.
Yeah, I think that this has got lots of nuggets for the audience.
Good. I'm glad. Thanks, guys.
Where can we find you on socials or?
Well, you can find me on Facebook at the Fiske Group, and also on Instagram. I don't post a lot on the Fiske Group's Instagram, just some stories. Personally, I'm on LinkedIn, and
I'm sure you can ask ChatGPT, who is Darlene Fiske.
Oh yeah,
we'll find you.
That's a fun exercise. We did that the other night, and I'm like, wow, ChatGPT thinks I'm kind of cool. It's really neat.
It actually makes me sound even better.
I know. I like this AI thing. Yeah, it's going to be good.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Great
Natalie.
to meet you.
Thanks, Dan.
A sincere thank you to Darlene Fiske for sharing her journey, insights, and wisdom on PR, branding, and wellness. If there's one takeaway from today's conversation, it's that success isn't just about what you do. It's about building relationships, taking risks, and staying curious. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. Have any thoughts on today's episode? Connect with us on social media and let us know what resonated with you the most. If you'd like to be a guest or submit a question as a Gen Z contributor, check out our show notes for details on how to participate. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and stay uncharted.